Hello, and welcome to another edition of HRS Presents, your YouTube source for behavioral health information and resources. I'm Reggie Robinson, Community Coordinator for Health Recovery Services. September is National Recovery Month. Recovery Month is a national observance held every September to educate Americans that substance use treatment and mental health services can enable those with a mental and/or substance use disorder to live a healthy and rewarding life. Recovery Month celebrates the gains made by those in recovery, just as we celebrate health improvements made by those who are managing other health conditions, such as hypertension, diabetes, asthma, and heart disease. This observance reinforces the positive message that behavioral health is essential to overall health, prevention works, treatment is effective, and people can and do recover. There are millions of Americans whose lives have been transformed through recovery. I'm one of them. Since these successes often go unnoticed by the broader population, Recovery Month provides a vehicle for everyone to celebrate these accomplishments. Each September, tens of thousands of prevention, treatment, and recovery programs and facilities around the country celebrate Recovery Month. They speak about the gains made by those in recovery and share their success stories with their neighbors, friends, and colleagues. In doing so, everyone helps to increase awareness and furthers a greater understanding about the diseases of mental and substance use disorders. The 2020 National Recovery Month theme is Join the Voices for Recovery, celebrating connections. Recovery Month will continue to educate others about substance use disorders and co-occurring disorders and about the effectiveness of treatment and recovery services. It will also remind all of us that recovery is possible. All of us, from celebrities and sports figures to our coworkers, neighbors, friends, and family members, throughout our lives have experienced peaks and valleys, both big and small. But with strength, support, and hope from the people we love, we are resilient. In this episode of HRS Presents, and throughout National Recovery Month, we will celebrate the stories of recovery, as well as inform and educate our viewers on the treatment and prevention of substance use disorders and other addictions. We will also highlight recovery events and activities in our region. One such event is going on right now in Meigs County, Ohio. Let's go to Pomeroy, Ohio, where Health Recovery Services Community Services Manager Brian Howard is waiting to show us the Meigs County Community Prevention Coalition's Recovery Walk, going on throughout the month of September.
Hi everybody, this is Brian Howard from Health Recovery Services and the Meigs County Community Prevention Coalition. We're here at the O'Brien Mini Park in downtown Pomeroy, and we're here to celebrate National Recovery Month. We have this nice remembrance wall here, and we'd like to showcase some of the stories that folks have shared with us. Here we have Daniel's story, of his recovery and what it means to him and his family. So as you come down through here, you can see we have different resources, different stories that we have. help us celebrate Recovery Month by leaving your well wishes and celebrations on our wishing wall for those in recovery. You can fill out one of the tags, and we have some ideas here for well wishes or celebrations of people in recovery. You could try writing a prayer, an uplifting message, how many days you've been sober, recognition of a friend or a loved one. So please come on down and put up a tag on our wall. Smartphone and scan these codes, these QR codes, for valuable resources in our area. The Gallia Jackson Meigs Atom Board, the Meigs County Community Prevention Coalition, and also some information about the Trevor Project and other suicide prevention resources. This recovery wall will be here for the entire month of September as we celebrate National Recovery Month. Make sure you come down and fill out one of your own Celebrate Recovery tags for us. Thank you very much. Recovery is a journey, not a destination.
Thank you, Brian. Honest, courageous, and insightful aren't words typically used to describe people with substance use disorders. But if given the chance, many people with addictions end up developing these qualities and contributing to society in a way they never imagined possible. These successes occur in spite of major obstacles, from the ever-present threat of relapse to the pervasive stereotypes addicts encounter along the way. Even with decades of myth-busting research behind us, some of the most damaging beliefs about addiction remain, such as myth number 1. Using drugs or alcohol is a choice, so if someone gets addicted, it's their fault. Recovery isn't as simple as exercising enough willpower. People do not choose to become addicted any more than they choose to have cancer. Genetics makes up about half the risk of addiction. Environmental factors such as family life, upbringing, trauma, and peer influences make up the other half. Brain imaging studies show that differences in the brain are both a cause and effect of addiction. Long before drugs enter the picture, there are neurobiological differences in people who become addicted compared to those who do not become addicted. Once an individual starts using drugs, prolonged drug use changes the structure and function of the brain, making it difficult to control impulses, feel pleasure from natural rewards like sex or food, and to focus on anything other than getting and using drugs. People with addiction are usually living pretty miserable lives and wouldn't choose to live that way if given the chance. Myth number 2. If someone just uses willpower, they should be able to stop. The reality is that for people who are vulnerable to addiction, substance use can lead to profound changes in the brain. These changes hijack the natural reward pathway of the brain. In nature, rewards usually only come with effort and after a delay, but addictive substances shortcut this process and flood the brain with chemicals that signal pleasure. When the disease takes hold, these changes in the brain erode a person's self control and ability to make good decisions while sending highly intense impulses to take drugs. These are the same circuits linked to survival, driving powerful urges no different from those driving the need to eat or drink water. These overwhelming impulses help explain the compulsive and often baffling behavior around addiction. People will keep using even when terrible things happen to them. Myth number 3. Addiction only affects certain types of people. This disease does not discriminate. Addiction can affect anyone, no matter your age or income, ethnicity or religion, family or profession. Nationally, about 1 in 8 people ages 12 and up are impacted. Myth number 4. If someone has a stable job and family life, they can't be suffering from addiction. Many people live in denial because they're successful in their professional lives, or because they don't drink until after 5 p.m., or because they come from a good home. The reality is that anyone can be vulnerable to addiction. Many people hide the severity of their illness or don't get help because of stigma and shame. If drinking or using drugs is causing any kind of conflict or problem in your personal or professional life, it's worth seeking support. Myth number 5. People have to hit rock bottom before they can get well. This simply isn't true, and it's dangerous. The longer you wait, the sicker the person gets, and this can have deadly consequences. Studies show that people forced into treatment have an equal chance of success as people who decide to go on their own. Also, people who get help before their illness is so severe have more resources to draw upon, such as supportive family or a job to help them successfully recover. So the sooner someone gets help, the better. Myth number 6. Going to treatment will fix the problem. Addiction is a chronic disease, which means it's a long-lasting condition that can be controlled but not cured. Treatment can be the first step toward wellness, but it's just the very beginning. Many people need more than one treatment visit to get on a stable path to wellness. More importantly, staying well requires a lifelong commitment to personally managing the disease. Myth number 7. If someone relapses, they're a lost cause. Try not to be too discouraged by a relapse, which is a recurrence of symptoms. Addiction is a chronic illness very similar to type 2 diabetes or hypertension, meaning it requires lifelong management. Relapse is no more likely with addiction than it is for these other chronic illnesses. Getting well involves changing deeply embedded behaviors. This takes time and effort and sometimes results in setbacks. This doesn't mean previous treatments failed, because the person with disease still made progress overall in getting well. A recurrence may be a sign that the treatment approach or other supports need to change, or that other treatment methods are needed. There is hope. Keep in mind that most people with addiction who suffer a recurrence will return to recovery. Myth number 8. People with addiction are bad and need to be punished. Man or woman, rich or poor, young or old, if a person develops an addiction, there's a widespread assumption that they are bad, weak-willed, or immoral. The hostility toward addicts takes a form unprecedented among other chronic illnesses, prompting harsh legal sanctions and judgmental attitudes. It is true that sometimes after prolonged substance use, people with substance use disorders do horrible things. These bad acts are often impossible to understand. They're due to profound changes in the brain that compel them to lie, cheat, steal, or worse in order to keep using. While this behavior can't be condoned, it's important to understand they do it because they are deeply sick and need help. Sick people need treatment, not punishment, to get well. Myth number 9. Addiction is treated behaviorally, so it must be a behavioral problem, not a disease. Human behavior begins in the brain. Advanced brain studies show that different types of treatments, such as psychotherapy and medication, can change brain function. This is true for depression and other illnesses, including addiction. Sometimes behavioral treatment, like counseling, is enough. Sometimes medication may be required as well. But the fact that behavioral treatments can be effective does not mean addiction isn't a real illness. Myth number 10. Prescription drugs are not addictive like street drugs because they come from a doctor. Addiction to prescription medications, including painkillers, sedatives, and stimulants, is a serious and growing problem among all age groups. These drugs can be highly addictive and have serious harmful effects. Even if these drugs are prescribed by your physician, you may be at risk. Myth number 11. People usually get addicted to one type of substance. At one time, we believed that most addicts had one drug of choice and stuck with it. Today, polysubstance abuse, the use of 3 or more classes of substances, is the norm, not the exception. Some people use multiple substances to create a more intense high, while others take certain drugs to counteract the undesirable effects of another drug. Some supplement their primary drug of choice with whatever is readily available. Polysubstance abuse appears to be particularly common among males, those who begin using drugs at an early age, and adolescents and young adults. People who abuse multiple substances are more likely to struggle with mental illness, which, when complicated by drug interactions and side effects, makes polysubstance abuse riskier and more difficult to treat than other types of drug abuse. Myth number 12. People who get addicted to prescription drugs are different from people who get addicted to illegal drugs. Despite the fact that prescription drug abuse has reached epidemic proportions in the past decade, the use of legal drugs to get high carries less stigma than the use of illicit drugs. Because medications like Vicodin, Xanax, and Adderall can be prescribed by a doctor, are relatively safe when used as prescribed, and are already sitting in most people's medicine cabinets, there's a widespread misconception that they are safer than street drugs. This is not true. As we previously have stated, these drugs can be harmful or deadly if abused. Now that we've addressed common myths about addiction, let's learn more about it.
What is addiction? It's also called a substance use disorder. Over 20 million people nationwide suffer from addiction. 1 in 7 people will experience addiction at some point in their life. Scientists first began to understand addiction as a brain disorder back in the 1950s. Doctors Olds and Milner, in laboratory studies of rats, found the parts of the brain affected by addiction. But then in 1994, Drs. Volkoff and Shelbert, top neuroscientists, ran PET scans of the brain that showed the effects of substance use disorders. And like other diseases, these scans showed it affected tissue function. So there are 2 main parts of the brain affected by drug use: the limbic system and the cortex. The limbic system, located deep within the brain, is responsible for our basic survival instincts. So when you do essential things to stay alive, like eat, drink, find shelter, have sex, or care for your young, your brain reinforces behaviors that cause the release of dopamine from this region. That reward for surviving is also transmitted to the amygdala and hippocampus, which records a memory of that feeling, so we seek it again. This is our survival hardwiring. Addiction also affects this area, up here. That's the prefrontal cortex, which is what separates us from other animals. And this is where decision-making and impulse control live. When drugs or alcohol are used, they activate the very same dopamine process in the survival center. And when use is repeated, that substance can hijack that part of the brain. This hijacker changes the brain and weakens this system to make it believe that the primary need for survival is the drug. In hijacking the brain, it can usurp those primary motivations: food, water, shelter, sex, and protecting our young. And the hijacker needs more and more of the substance to activate the same level of reward or feeling of pleasure, causing the brain tissue to become increasingly damaged with continued drug use. So why don't all people who use alcohol or drugs become addicted? There are factors that contribute to the development of a substance use disorder. They include individual factors like your genes, your age of exposure, and then environmental factors like drug availability. But there is good news. Addiction is preventable. Key factors that aid in preventing addiction can be categorized into two parts: risk factors and protective factors. Protective factors range from parental involvement, programs that improve self-control, limiting availability, and increasing attachment to your community. Another key element in preventing substance use disorders is to delay when use begins. Put simply, prevention is about delaying the onset of first use. In the adolescent brain, where brain tissue is more vulnerable, the hijacker is more prone to weaken the brain and plant itself as a disease. Those with substance use disorders commonly initiate first use much earlier, between 12 and 18 years old, which increases the likelihood of the hijacker taking hold. But if the hijacker does take hold, addiction is treatable. Advancements have been made in assessments, treatment programs, recovery supports, and medications to treat addiction. Brain scans show that once in recovery, the tissue in the limbic system and cortex can get better. With your help, we can expand these innovations to help millions of individuals and families and ensure that addiction is treated as the medical issue that it is. Together, we can solve this. Join us.
And now, we'd like to share a special recovery story from our contributor, Leanne.
My name is Leanne Brooks, and I am a recovering addict of anything that brings instant gratification. What that means is that I would once do anything to keep me from feeling sad, mad, tired, or bored. I would shop, clean, gamble, and especially use drugs. I lived with this insanity for 25 years. Most of the people around me never knew I had multiple addictions, not even me. Every one of those addictions usually ended in tragedy. I kept my addictions a secret until it caught up with me. At the end of my active addiction, I lost almost everything. I lost good paying, respectable jobs. I lost my home. I lost relationships. I lost my dignity. My health was deteriorating. And if I would have continued on this path, I would have lost my life. All of this because I was too afraid to ask for help. I was too afraid of what others would think of me. My family suffered and continued to enable me because of my fear of what people would think about them. I tried many times to get sober, but I had done so much damage. Most people aren't willing to give an addict a second chance. You are stuck with that stigma, a barrier that stands between you and society's norms. So I asked myself, what do I have to prove? No one cares if I live or die. The drugs make it easier to hide from the shame and the guilt. But a time comes in your life when you finally get it. It took losing almost every material possession I had, personal relationships that I valued, and losing my freedom before I would finally say this is enough. In May of 2018, my recovery journey began. With the help of my counselor, we found a treatment center, and I decided to give it a try. I remember sitting in front of the nurse's station shortly after I arrived, and this overwhelming feeling of relief came over me, and I said to myself, I don't have to do this anymore. While in treatment, I learned a lot about addiction. I learned that there are others exactly like me going through the same thing. So I decided that I would listen to what everyone had to say. And then I couldn't figure out why it took me so long to go to treatment. I successfully graduated treatment after 18 days, not because I was cured, but because I wanted to get back to my life and deal with my financial and legal obligations. After treatment, I had to devote as much time and focus as possible to rebuilding and restructuring myself. You can't just do one little thing to overhaul the damage that addiction does to you emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually. By facing my disease of addiction, I had to understand what recovery meant. I had to learn to recognize my addictive impulses and understand the meanings behind them. I had to develop an understanding of spirituality. I had to change the way I think. I continued outpatient treatment and went to 12-step meetings. When I realized that I could wake up in the mornings with positive thoughts instead of old, negative, destructive, compulsive thoughts, I knew I was in recovery. I became involved in my community, volunteering in recovery and reentry initiatives. I enrolled at Hawking College to pursue addiction counseling, later discovering that I could also obtain a degree in EMS, as I always wanted to do. I finished out required commitments, and I began repairing broken relationships by being present and letting my actions speak louder than my apologies. Experiencing these impacts has given me a constancy of purpose and has empowered me to do more for my fellow peers and my community despite the obstacles that I still face. Today I get to help others personally and professionally, and those that are facing adversities because of my own experiences. I am a volunteer of 12 different community committees focused on recovery and reentry, both at the local and state levels. I work at HRS as a case manager where I run an intensive outpatient program and provide individual addiction counseling. I also work at a women's recovery house as a house manager, and I recently graduated from Hawking College with a degree in addiction counseling that will allow me to become a licensed chemical dependency counselor. I'm also pursuing a prevention specialist certification, and of course graduated with my degree in emergency medical services. I am able to continue my education this fall at Franklin University, where I will be studying public administration. This will allow me to reach my ultimate goal of working with others to bring programs to Athens County. It is easy to reflect on the past and wish I had never made decisions that led me down this dark road. I think everything happens for a reason. This addiction has shaped me into the person I am today. I believe that I had to live this life because I am strong enough to get through it. My decision to get help has given me new relationships and strengthened old ones. I am fortunate to have a great support system with understanding loved ones. Some days it isn't easy. It takes discipline, direction, willingness, and perseverance. These are all welcome qualities that I no longer take for granted. My recovery gave me a new chance at life, a chance that I must work for daily. It has given me spiritual awakening that I never had and has showed me how to live in humility, serenity, peace, and strength. I am proud to be me, and I am delighted that I was given the opportunity to learn this lesson in life. This morning I was reading, and the action for the day was to list 3 things that you are grateful for at the end of your day. And I was thinking to myself that I don't have to wait until the end of the day to list what I am grateful for, because today I can do that as soon as my feet hit the floor when I get out of bed. And those 3 things that came to my mind were I have breath in my lungs so that I can breathe and I can focus on this second chance of my life. The second one was the constancy of purpose, because that allows me to carry my message to other people that are still suffering and help them understand that recovery is a good way of life. And then the third one was just gratitude in general, and how grateful I am to have everything around me that allows me to see the good and the bad, but I can now turn the bad into good things.
Thank you for joining us for this special Recovery Month edition of HRS Presents. September is also National Suicide Prevention Month. Watch for a special HRS Presents episode next week on suicide prevention. Health Recovery Services is collaborating with the Athens-Hocking-Vinton 317 Board, the Gallia-Jackson Meigs Alcohol, Drug Addiction, and Mental Health Services Board, Hopewell Health's Zero Suicide Initiative, the Ohio Suicide Prevention Foundation, and the American Suicide Prevention Foundation to offer an online suicide prevention conference on Wednesday, September 30th. Please save the date and watch for registration information right here. We'll see you next week on HRS Presents.